Hey guys, welcome back to the Casual NBA Fanatic podcast. Today, we're just going to be hitting off our top three regular season seeds in the West. Just the three teams really that I expect to really dominate the 82 game season, and so let's get straight into it. For my projected first seed in the Western Conference, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder landing once again for the third time, just based off the natural progression piece for their improvements, but also just based off the extent of dominance from last season. Last year in the West, OKC was 16 games clear of the 2 seed, and for me, that type of ground to make up is pretty extraordinary from any team at the moment. And when we're talking about what makes these great regular season teams, it's really just their specialty. I mean, we spoke about in our last podcast with Cleveland. I mean, we talked about their elite pick and roll partnership. We're talking about the half-court offensive flow. We're talking about Orlando with their ability to focus on winning on the margins. New York just having immense levels of physically gifted skill in their offense. And for OKC, I mean, their specialty, no doubt, is that they have an all-time great defense, which does give them by far the most overpowered floor in basketball, and a feature that will undoubtedly give them a 60-win floor for the regular seasons if they can stay relatively healthy across the board. Obviously, I know people love talking about the youthful exuberance on the OKC roster, but to be honest, we're actually looking at a really nice mix of youth and veteran balance here. We have Alex Caruso, 31, Lou Dort, 26, SGA, 27, Hartenstein, 27, Aaron Wiggins, 26, Kenrich Williams, 30 years old. And so basically in terms of like actual primes, the bulk of the playable guys are really at that competitive stage, whether you have the maturity to actually understand how to man the regular season ship, but also have the spring in their step to attack with full force. And that's why I think gives them a really safe blend for the 82. And when we are reviewing what made this defense so phenomenal last year, it really just starts with the personnel. I mean, you have like 4 top 15 defenders in the NBA on one team. You got a megastar who can also support a plus team oriented role in SGA. You also have elite supplementing bigs as well who can provide an array of different matchup capabilities that we saw them play against Memphis and Denver quite comfortably. And we do give a ton of praise to the point of attack for OKC, but in terms of the actual front line and how much versatility they posed throughout last year, I mean, you got 2 very credible physical absorbers in Jay Will and Isaiah Hartenstein. And then you have an all-time elite verticality and apex contesting value big in Chet Holmgren. And that alone could give you all the switchability with Chet alone, just the elite help side recovery defender who put together the most defensive postseason that we've really seen in quite some time. And then also looking at the point of attack, I mean, just by personnel alone, that kind of just tells the story. I mean, Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Jalen Williams, Cason Wallace, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Aaron Wiggins. Guys who all pose really just either elite or high-level talents in all facets of actual perimeter defensive play. I mean, these are elite on- and off-ball defenders, guys that can clog lanes, play help, rotate in pure sync, guys that can cover angles, compete and shut off laterally with both strength, speed, and anticipation at the highest of levels, and guys that do pose very valuable switchability, especially in guys like Jalen Williams, Alex Caruso, and SGA, guys who are quite prolific with their hand activity as guards in basketball, and just so disturbing with the mix of guys that they did have. And really just the true feeling of unison is what made this team so perfected defensively. We're talking about like pure pill switching, wiper rotations, the confidence that they actually gave each other to front and load up strong sides and suffocate advantage creation at the highest level. And just the overall floor as well. I mean, when you have a defense as historically cohesive and destructive as that, you kind of just give yourself a super reliable, advantageous trait against every single team in the league. And that is why in the 82, I do think that they'll have a pretty easy way to another 60-win season. Obviously, offensively, I mean, you just have one of the most prolific floor raisers in NBA history in SGA. Someone who was able to mostly carry a top 3 offense last year in what was a pretty questionable situation with the injuries and the variance with the stars, but also just the fluctuating spacing on that squad as well. SGA himself last year, just the most unstoppable isolation and pick and roll scorer on the planet, full stop, and a very decent initiator by all means, and the most prolific pull-up volume scorer and driver in the league. And with that sort of talent dictating your possessions, again, just the offensive floor is already at such a high standard, and the defensive play kind of just gives them that cushion as well to have these offensive variances as well. Also, haven't really touched on it, but you also have J-Dub and Chet Holmgren, guys that will have key points of natural aggression that I'm eyeing off, and why I do think OKC will maintain their top placing in the West. These are just two guys who showed a lot of flaws still last year, especially in their offensive games. For Holmgren, it was more the limitations with his frame, the lack of size, the inconsistent vision, and sometimes those slow shot mechanics as well that did mitigate a lot of what he could do with the spacing. For J-Dub, it was more the regression in pull-up value, just regression in overall spot-up efficiency, and then also just sometimes the lack of true agility-based and high cognitively developed rim pressure. Obviously sometimes J-Dub was someone who would over-rely on the power to get him that driving impact as well. But these factors, for me, these are things that typically pan themselves out, and though OKC just won the title, and the urgency for desperate improvement would be quite low, I think these are just some of the most mature and hard-working young superstars in the league, and guys that no doubt will show real boosts in their own respective impacts in the game. And for me, that does play in the odds for OKC to stabilize their placing in the West in the regular season as the first seed. Now, my second team is, again, a pretty expected squad who will land here. Someone who just topped up on what already was an extraordinarily constructed offensive system, and that is the Denver Nuggets. And just to list the overall off-ball value first that this team brings, this one actually took me by so much surprise of just how valuable these guys are off-ball. When we're talking about spot-up ranks across the league, this is how the projected starting unit for Denver goes. Jamal Murray, 64th percentile. Christian Brown, 68th percentile. Cam Johnson, 84th percentile. Aaron Gordon, 89th percentile. And Nikola Jokic, 97th percentile. This is just an absurdly polished crew of physical, but extremely skilled and coherent offensive guys who no doubt will mesh and blend absolutely perfectly once again. And just really the addition and swap between Cam Johnson and MPJ as well, that kind of just adds a touch-up on the perimeter ball handling value with Cam's ability to initiate and pose a threat in pick and roll. And then also just more defensive fundamentals as an actual wing stopper and comfortable switcher. And Denver didn't need to bring back Russell Westbrook when you do top up on that type of ball handling in the starting unit. And for Denver as well, it's not just the overall skill level, it's the strength factor that is so staunching for teams. We're talking about real powerful frames beginning with the creation standpoint between Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. And then also you have the rough physical work and off-ball activity that happens a lot on the backlines and on those slot cuts between Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon. Guys that really make this team just such a brutal subtlety to play against. Obviously the creation between Jokic and Murray is extremely safe, especially for the 35 to 40 minutes that you do have Jokic for a night. But the backline timing and those slot cut efforts, they're what give the superstar offensive duo the outlets and avenues to create the easy looks that they can manufacture. And just the overall physical offensive identity is just so absurd. And that is Denver's superpower overall. Obviously, more reliable spot-up value coming from AJ and Christian Brown's progression as shot makers last year was really helpful. Denver just looks so immensely polished at generating healthy and balanced offense that absolutely dominates in the half court especially. And now with a more aggressive and stable defensive identity, with 30 minutes less of Michael Porter Jr. basketball, I just think the Nuggets will be absolutely tremendous at giving themselves enough life defensively to be competitive at the highest level, especially throughout this regular season. Jokic and Murray, also probably more on the poorer side of the spectrum defensively, and that is a given, but just having just two guys in the starting unit in this range of poor defensive players, that does give you a bit more hope at competing and improving the overall regular season baseline. And like we stated, the superpower for OKC, that's their all-time defense. Denver's superpower is the all-time consistent half-court physical offensive process and the inevitable high-quality shot generation. And in terms of the effectiveness of their actions as well, it just gives Denver such an easy advantage to manage the 82-game season, especially as Denver's not a team that purely relies on athleticism to get favorable offense. And athleticism is something that does vary itself as an advantage more so than relying on physical aggression for your shot creation methods. And also in terms of like the defensive side of the ball as well, Denver's a team that have proven an ability to put together a sufficient enough structure to battle against top tier teams. And with just how powerful the offense is, I mean, Denver just give themselves a ton of cushion on the defensive side of things. Like, they just have playmaking athletes as well. I mean, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon, and then you're adding Cam Johnson to the mix. That just gives them more reliable screen navigation and more credible ring resistance, who does provide also more physical deterrence on the perimeter at denying those easy penetration advantages that MPJ gave up so frequently. And I just think the defensive baseline, just absolutely huge for Denver to bring in Cam Johnson overall. I just think it was a picture-perfect move. I know they gave up a lot and a lot of flexibility for their future, but it was just so worth it to improve that defensive floor. Obviously, the lack of aggregate shooting efficiency isn't as maximized with the extremely low volume reliance on the three ball. Obviously, Denver took the least amount of threes last season. But for Denver, I mean, it's the possession-based scoring that also gives them their elite clutch offensive floor. I mean, last year, Denver led the league in total field goal percentage in both regular season and clutch situations. And in the clutch, they shot over 60% effective field goal percentage. Across last season, they posted a 127 offensive rating in the clutch. And that is much to do with the reliability of the shot generation between that Jokic and Murray pick and roll tandem and the Jokic post-game as well. And those are two things that did give Denver extremely reliable, high-efficiency-based go-to weapons. And also just with how creative Denver have become in their offensive process, frequently relying on that Jokic-initiated inverted action even more so now, which he still scores at an 80th percentile out of somehow. I don't know. But Denver's like actual creation methods for offense, they're just so flawless right now. And they do present the requisite physical maturity and the stability to uphold their consistency throughout the 82. And I just think with the roster changes, I do have Denver pretty comfortably as my predicted 2 seed in the Western Conference. Now, my predicted 3rd seed of the regular season is also pretty obvious. I think it's just the big 3 of the contenders out of the West. And last season, already a super strong regular season formula that also adds a game-breaking gravitational offensive talent, and that is the Houston Rockets. Now, natural progression and a talent addition are really just the boost for Houston, and why I do reckon they'll join Denver and OKC as 55-plus win team juggernauts of the regular season. And just building upon their designated core of Şengün, Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith, and Reed Shepherd as well. The thing is, the floor that you get with guys like Şengün, Reed, and Jabari, that is the really intriguing part overall. And at this point, young guys with strong motors who have relatively defined skill sets, roles, and capabilities, guys who pose already as super strong regular season guys. But then you also just have the absurd ceiling in Amen Thompson, just someone who I believe will continue to grow out the comfort on those soft touch looks, and someone who will absolutely explode in overall value as one of the most talented players in basketball with his ability to thrive on the margins. And basically, just the core that Houston are really leaning into, it's absolutely so strong for manning regular season motor. Last year, the 52 wins were purely backed by just intensity, just elite focus on the margins, and elite physical athleticism. And all of these things, they cultivated just such an intimidating and brutally tough culture in Houston. And we spoke about it with Orlando, but focusing on winning the extra possessions through your defense, on the glass, and with your athletic strengths, that does give you the extra cushion to actually have a poor offensive skilled team. And that did limit Houston's ceiling last year, but in terms of like the floor for Houston, that was what got them a 2 seed, despite the major personnel limitations. And that really also plays into just proving how much a good culture and how much belief matters in a locker room, even in professional sports in general. And now, obviously, in Houston, you're supplementing the slightly positive impact of Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks, and you're throwing in an ultra-efficient and staggeringly valuable offensive force in Kevin Durant. Just someone who continues to add to this brutal physical identity that does now possess one of the most overpowered spacing weapons of all time, still polished as ever. And with the extra insertion of physical bodies, guys that do provide plus value again on the margins, Houston just have really leaned into this efficient regular season identity. And I do think the process of developing that on-court synergy will take time. And like obviously the load and attention on KD is pretty huge now, especially without Dylan Brooks and Jalen Green, two capable spacers for this Houston Rockets team. But I still believe in Houston. I believe that they'll have enough time to figure it out, just with how much room for error they do give themselves with their defensive brilliance. And it's really similar to that of the Memphis identity from years back in terms of that regular season formula. As Houston last year, and this will probably be replicated once again, they led the league in rebounds and field goals attempted, just giving them those extra possessions, which are so valuable. Interesting question marks for Houston will be the switchability of their bigs across the roster. Also, if there are any weak points to go at, it is their frontline bigs. Alperen Şengün, Steven Adams, and Clint Capella. And then another question mark, obviously, there are major height disadvantages between your projected starting backcourt. The starting backcourt projected Fred VanVleet and Reed Sheppard. To be honest though, for me, I don't think this really weighs into much of a question mark. The lower center of gravity and the ability to harass the base of bigs does give me more confidence in the small stature of these guards being resistant to mismatch hunting to a degree. But in terms of the personnel, it's extremely developed as a set defense overall for Houston. And with KD paired next to Amen, you just have two of the best mistake-wiping wing defenders in basketball, guys who do provide real rim deterrence, as we saw especially from Amen last year, who was one of the most efficient rim protectors in basketball, full stop, regardless of position. And then also KD, he just adds to the plethora of switchable perimeter defenders who should be able to offer value around the rim as well for less taxing defensive roles. Maybe KD will be positioned a lot as a backline helper and swarmer, someone who still has great length, pretty subtle strength and great contesting principles overall. And for Houston, they probably won't reach the pristine discipline of OKC's point of attack line, but they will no doubt be an extremely tough squad to attain clean spot-up looks against. And just with the recovery speed and rotation athleticism between guys like Amen, KD, Tari, and Jabari, and the timing for your more physically built guys as well. And though KD isn't this space-assertive shot creator anymore, someone that can't really battle and bruise for positioning and imposing advantage creation at this age, just the level of active movement around him and the spacing boost, I just think the Rockets will get a lot out of Reed Sheppard as well with his projected role increase and the natural development. That'll all alleviate most of the concerns for Houston's offense and giving them an easy path as a top-tier seed in the West. And so there it is. Just a quick fire episode. And just to quickly recap, my top three seed predictions in the West are number 1, the OKC Thunder, number 2, the Denver Nuggets, and number 3, the Houston Rockets. And pretty predictable, but still valuable to break down. And just with how close these teams are in terms of motivation, skill, and process. And I just think the main factor that probably will separate these teams so marginally is the varied levels of health, which to be honest hasn't really been a factor for either of these squads just yet, but obviously time will tell. But obviously with these three, that means I obviously passed up on some really intriguing squads. Obviously Minnesota, Los Angeles Lakers, the Golden State Warriors, the Clippers, the Mavs, and possibly even Memphis. Just teams who all have actual avenues for landing a top 3 spot with just how talented they are. But that is just the reality of the Western Conference at this point. So let me know if you think I got things right, or you reckon another team will sneak above my predicted top seeds. Hit me up on the Instagram at CasualNBAFanatic with your predictions for either conference, and make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss out on any more content that will be coming out very soon.